Oh, I heard fuck tug, and I was like,
Anakin,
whoa.
stop panicking.
All right.
Jesus has a planikin.
Oh, fuck, every time.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, so
clap for
welcome
Boba
to
Fett.
a very special episode of Commuters, the first of 3 episodes of Commuters, where we will be going over 3 Star Wars trilogies, which is also 3 movies, that's what trilogy means. We're actually going to talk about Star Wars.
I would think you'd be Star Wars
originals.
Episode 4, A New Hope.
We're talking about Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Following this episodes, we will have episodes covering the prequel trilogy and the sequel trilogy.
Oh boy.
Hence completing a trilogy of trilogies.
Can I just preface that I'm not looking forward to either of those? This
Yeah,
is the only
it's
one
going
I
to
was
be a
looking
lot of
forward to.
trudging. We're kind of starting off with the best right out the gate.
Yeah. Well, of course, the first ones are always the best.
Yeah. But, so...
You say that, but Godfather 2 is the best sequel of
I've
all
never
time.
seen that.
It's fantastic.
You're the best sequel of all time.
Thank you.
Wait, what?
Why don't we start
Alright.
giving our opinions on Star Wars, the original movie called Star Wars, and what we think about it.
So the first Star Wars, as it's commonly called today, A New Hope, but apparently it wasn't called A New Hope back when it was first premiered.
I mean, they didn't think it was going to succeed.
Well, they didn't know, but here's the thing. It was something new that no one has ever seen before, and it skyrocketed. And it became a sensation throughout the world, basically. And I gotta say, the first Star Wars is my favorite of all. The originality of it, the actual design of it, you know, because you could tell that it had that oldish CGI look with the with the blasters of the lasers and all that other stuff and the lightsabers. It just looked so good.
Like the painted in
Yeah.
lasers and stuff like they did back then.
Yeah,
Wasn't
it
it
was awesome. It was amazing.
scratched into the film directly?
They
No,
messed with the exposure.
Oh, is that what happens? What?
And
I
they
thought
would,
I thought that was a trick, is that they actually did scratch. That
Kind
was
of,
an old
I mean-
thing I was told, though. So.
Yeah.
That's a way of wording it. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting.
It's a
thing,
practical
regardless.
effect, yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's a great looking practical effect, ain't it?
It is.
And the story of it, constant. It was good. It never lost its continuity. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but it never lost its consistency.
Consistency. There you
Consistency. I need to go back to school.
Nah, dude, school didn't teach you anything. So you think your favorite probably of the original trilogy is A New Hope? Really?
Yes.
That's really interesting to hear.
It's one of my favorites.
That's crazy to me, because like I love A New Hope, but it's got that very like, oh, we're the start of a grander story kind of feel.
I think that's what I
But
really
at the same
like
time, it's
a lot about
self-contained.
New Hope, though, is that it still has that indie film feel. to
Yeah.
it. You know, it's.
Yeah, all right.
I can see it in the faces of all of the actors. I mean, they're doing a phenomenal job, all
Yeah.
of them. You know, it's probably for indie films, you know, for an independently made film that wasn't a big box office hit out of the gate, is probably one of the best ever made for production value.
It also feels like it's a movie that's like, you could get that vibe like, hey, this could suck
Yeah.
really bad.
Yeah.
Like if you were to
they do
bits
everything
and
right.
pieces.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
go up to that line where they're just pushing the boundary between like corny and believable,
Yes.
and they teeter on that line really, really precariously, but they always stay on the side of realistic, which I think is what sells Star Wars.
Also, just a quick correction. It was a box office hit right out the gate.
Yeah.
Well, no, what I mean is that it's not a pre-established.
Yeah, I think I
They
understood
didn't
what you
know
mean.
it was going to.
That's
so.
yeah. That's the thing that
Yeah.
you'll hear all the time when they were gearing up to actually produce it, and they were going through all the steps. No one thought it was gonna succeed.
Yeah.
No one
All-
expected it.
All of the actors and actresses had a lot of input too, which I find really interesting in their characters and their scripts, because George Lucas wasn't the greatest dialogue writer. I mean, he knew how to tell a progressive story and keep it, you know, succinct and moving. But there's a lot of like really, really lengthy, verbose dialogue that Mark Hamill specifically had cut out of Luke because he's just kind of a teen kid.
Yeah.
I mean, you can hear it a lot too. You know, in the well, wait, if they found the droids, then they would track it back to to our place, which that leads to home. You know, it's all one breath. And there's an even worse example of them talking about the space station, you know, the Death Star, in its regard to Alderaan, about how, like, Alderaan's not prepared for an invasion of that magnitude. They're only prepared for like a fleet-based invasion, and other planets are
They're a peaceful planet.
Yeah, other planets are in the same vein as Alderaan. Literally a dialogue line talking about that to Han Solo, who just doesn't give a crap, all within the same breath. And he was like pleading with George, don't make me say this. It's the most wordy, awful line ever.
You can also see the irony in that, considering when we do get around to it, the prequels kind of have that problem. There's a lot of, like, I said something on the way here to you guys, and it's that Star Wars is at its best when it's not very talkative.
Yeah.
It kind of, a lot of the magic comes from...
The visuals.
Yeah. Like,
which is what something that New Hope kind of suffers from, I would say, just to finish off my input, is that it struggles because it struggles in the same way that it is fantastic, is that Star Wars, the original movie, has to set itself up, you know? It still has to explain everything, talk about the Jedi and the Sith and the Empire and the Republic and the Rebellion, whereas you can just go right into the following movies with all of that info just banked. You know what I mean? It doesn't need to waste time.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, because like they name drop a lot of things just in A New Hope, and you're like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
They drop. It wasn't the Clone Wars line dropped in there, and you're like, what the fuck is?
Yeah, the Clone Wars wouldn't be realized for another 30 years.
Yeah, and you're just like, what the fuck are the Clone Wars? And then, you know, they start throwing around words, and you're like, I don't fully comprehend what's going on, but I'm having fun.
Right.
And that's something that, like, I think A New Hope does really well, is it is a fun movie. There's not a whole lot of, like, you feel like there's something more going on, and that there's a heavy conflict here, but you never get into it quite like you do when you get to the other films. This one kind of escalates to that, and you see it by the end, but it does feel kind of like you're starting your journey.
Yeah.
And then you reach a conclusion that's really explosive and crazy, and you're like, they did it! It's over! And then you're like, oh...
Oh, not quite.
Yeah, because then we get on to
Exactly.
more movies after this. The first movie is very simple. It's pretty simple. It's...
Because Darth Vader was always described as a traitorous Jedi. You know, he wasn't a Sith, and the Emperor wasn't either. You know, Ben Kenobi leads in with, oh yeah, he was a former Jedi who turned sides.
Yeah, he fell to the dark side, but we're not actually told. Is it even said in the first movie that the Emperor's what turned him to the dark side, or is that saved to the second movie?
No, that wasn't ever a thing. That the
it was
Emperor,
never said.
corrupted him.
No, it was in the
They said that
Return
the
of the
dark
Jedi.
side, the
The
dark
dark side of the
corrupted
Force.
I think that's
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing to note, though, is that we had a gradual progression to those elements that now people talk about all the time.
Yeah.
But when it first came out, it was literally just, he's a Jedi who turned traitorous. So and went to the dark side, and you're like, the dark side.
And he's the guy who
Big
killed
bed.
Luke Skywalker's father.
Yeah, which interesting, huh? How about that?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think Star Wars, the original Star Wars, is probably one of the most like beautifully like. It's probably one of, if you're starting a series, or if it's just your first indie movie or whatever, it's one of the best realized visions of all time, in my opinion. Like, they say like you can't build your house on weak ground. You know, you have to have solid ground.
Of course.
Well, freaking George Lucas made a plateau out of diamond to build his house upon. Like, it's so well structured, and the world is so well developed. In some, like, yes, there's a few exposition dumps, but they're so few and far between. And the way they just kind of casually mention names in those movies is done in a very like purposeful way. I feel like.
Exactly.
Like Han Solo's like in the bar, Greedo comes to Han Solo and he's like, oh, you know, blah blah blah, Jabba the Hutt's hunting you or whatever, and he's like, listen, I've got his money. You know, all of a sudden now you're like, okay, this dude's he's a scoundrel. He's on the run. He's being chased by people. Something to be said. It's like such a well told adventure movie where it's like anybody anywhere can enjoy this movie just as like a good old adventurous time, you know? Something that, there's a few movies in my opinion that capture this feel of just like the spirit of adventure the way the first Star Wars movie does. Another one in my opinion is the first Pirates of the Caribbean, where
I think
it's like
the first Indiana Jones too.
another
captures
perfect
spirit.
example.
Yeah.
All these actors were unknowns. That it, like Harrison Ford, He was.
Well, no, Alan, who played Ben
Okay.
Kenobi, yeah,
Um,
he's a big name. He was the biggest name on the set.
Yes, he was actually one of the reasons that they got funding at all for the film in order to make it was because Alec Guinness was on the film
Yep.
set. But like Harrison Ford, Carrie
He's a
Fisher,
carpenter,
and Mark Hamill.
you know? Yeah.
And Harrison Ford, what I loved about him is he was reading the lines, like, against the people who auditioned. Kurt Russell being one of them who auditioned for the role, and then he was just like he had to sit there and read the lines against people who are auditioning for Han Solo, and then like he was like begged George Lucas for a shot. George Lucas told the people or whatever, the higher ups, because the higher ups didn't want to let him have a shot.
Right.
But George Lucas was like, listen, we're gonna do it with him, and I want to give him a shot, and that's Harrison Ford.
Just kicked it off.
It's a very well wrapped up film. It's very like I like the idea that yes, it's a great stepping stone, but like the way it's told and the way it finishes, you feel like there couldn't be another one.
Yeah, well, they didn't have to make another one.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
they
satisfying.
definitely covered
That's
their
the
ass,
that's
yeah.
the thing that I think is really cool about it
If it
is
flopped, they still had just a nice one-off,
Yeah.
contained
Yeah.
story.
yeah, and
Which is to be commended. Like how many movies, especially now, have come
Oh.
out where it's like I'm setting up this huge franchise, and then they just
it happens all the time. Like
Can we-
so many movies that love this idea that they're going to become something. And this isn't something that's just a problem with movies. There's games, books that think like I can end on a cliffhanger because I might get my shot. And I'm like, no, tell a story first.
you cannot put down George Lucas for what he started, and the fact that like one of the most original, unique pieces of Americana, because that's what Star Wars is. It's American art in its like truest sense. Yes, it takes parts from a bunch of other cultures. You have Seven Samurai. You have a bunch of other things it takes influence from. But that's kind of the point of America as a country, which is something I always appreciated about Star Wars. Even though it takes place in a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago, it feels right at home.
And yet then you've got things like you have your scoundrel Solo who feels like he feels a little bit like a disgraced cowboy
Yeah.
at
Yeah,
times.
he's a
And then
desperado.
and then you've
What's
got like
a farm
this
boy.
Yeah, and then you got a farm boy, and then
Chewie
we've
is
got
kind of the black sheep in the herd there, because he's the surrogate, like,
He's the muscle.
yeah.
yeah, all right. And then you've got your like old to his ways kind of knight and
Well, he's the alien of the movie,
Chewie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then you get, like I said, you got Ben Kenobi, who's like your quote like old knight.
Yeah, he's
kinda.
the old knight.
And
the
then you
old
got
knight.
Leia, who's your damsel in
Princess.
distress /
Yep.
prince. You've got
Literally.
everything you could want, and it takes pieces from all these different like
Yeah. It has.
Stories.
They have to rescue a princess from a dungeon from an
in
evil
a space dungeon.
Yeah,
that's
well,
a moon, but that's not a moon.
But that's my point. You take a simple story.
That's a
Oh,
space
the
station.
princess in the castle captured by the evil wizard.
yeah,
Darth Vader, Castle Death Star, Princess Leia.
Yeah.
But what I respect about this though?
Mm-hmm.
They killed off a character.
Yeah, I mean the mentor has to die in that.
Yeah,
hero's
but
journey.
like, you didn't have to do that. If you get what I mean by
yeah,
that.
but it's the hero's journey.
That's what I mean, though. It's like you have a character. In fact, he's your most notable actor too, and you kill him off.
Yeah.
Hey, so to wrap, I actually have something. This will lead right into our next film. We go from A New Hope, which is wrapped up, pretty happy. Hero's journey, pretty cut. We go from that, which at the time, again, visually was breathtaking. The models, the effects, the way they did it looked great. Aliens looked like aliens, but were practical. It didn't feel like it took you out of the experience, you know? So much effort. And then we go into probably still to this day what is one of the most iconic openings to a fucking film ever.
Yeah.
In Empire Strikes Back. The Hoth's battle is just one of the single most iconic moments, not only in Star Wars, but just in like movies in general.
I love
The snow speeders, the AT-ATs, the vibe of
the ATSTs, everything.
Yeah.
The weapons.
yeah, you're like you go from this really happy ending to this super bleak like opening.
Yeah.
Oh shit, we're on the defensive against the Empire.
Again.
They're right on our asses, and you've got all your main characters against the wall pretty much. And that's how this whole movie feels. You go from something so happy, and you feel like something really changed. They made a difference to, well, this sucks.
You can see that the money that they made from the first Star Wars movie was completely put into this film. Like there's a few things I noticed like rewatching this stuff like right away. The camera, like the dynamic camera angles and stuff in Empire Strikes Back, like it takes the cinematography. Like the first movie is shot very wide, a lot of wide shots, a lot of medium, like very flat.
Would you describe it as
It's simplistic.
safe
Yeah,
and simplistic?
Yes.
Yeah.
The second film though is like, okay, no, now we've got money. We've got these actors are now they know how to act. They're comfortable. We're going close-ups. We're talking moving, walking down hallway shots with these huge sets, and like all of this money put into it, and all these giant effects. Giant made to look giant with like the AT-ATs and stuff, and you can really see. I mean, even just like the writing way snappier. I mean, I know that Lucas's wife helped a lot on like editing his scripts, but
Thank
like
goodness.
a lot of this stuff just it was kicked up to the next level the way a sequel really should be.
I mean, like I said, you open the movie with, again, one of the most iconic, I think, like, movie battles ever.
and it feels so grounded.
It feels
Like,
grounded. It feels like something's happening. Like, if you get what I mean by
Well,
that, there's a lot of like fight sequences or like big battles that happen in movies where I don't feel like I'm really getting anything out of it. Like I don't.
will interject though that I really appreciate that they don't just immediately cut into a battle like
Like
New
they
Hope
build
did,
into it.
because New Hope begins in the middle of a chase sequence, whereas this, they are settled, they're at a secret base, and we get to see it get discovered. The plans are getting laid to attack. We kind of get a little bit of a catch up with our characters, see what they've been up to. They ease us into it really, really cleverly, and I appreciate that kind of nuanced catch up right before they hit us with the Hoth battles.
I think Will brought up you brought up how everything had a very simplistic but iconic look to it.
Yes.
That everyone remembered it. I mean, think about it. These things are like made to be toys when you look back at it now too. It's crazy how iconic, cool, but also like it makes you want it. You want it, and then they did it, and it's crazy how it's like all the pieces fell
that's
into
the
place.
thing where like a lot of people. One thing I've never really had an issue with any Star Wars movie is like making the cool looking character just to make another action figure. It's like that's like literally woven into the DNA of Star Wars.
Yeah, as of Boba Fett was introduced in this movie. Technically not. He was introduced in the Christmas special. It's important. It's important. All right, everyone.
Disney said it's not allowed to be discussed.
Hey, fuck Disney for a second. I said it.
Cut the cameras!
But yeah, Boba Fett, technically, he wasn't introduced in this. He was introduced in the Christmas special,
But for most non-mega
yeah, he
nerds,
was introduced here. Oh, I didn't even know the Christmas special was a thing until I learned about it later. But yeah, he's introduced here. He's the epitome of he looks cool and does nothing.
Yeah.
Let's be real here. He
He's
does
a
nothing.
bounty hunter.
He's a bounty hunter. I think it's really telling that
He's
like
got
a character was loved so much for doing so little because his
He looked
appearance
cool.
is so. He looks in universe.
He's literally
and
got braided Wookiee scalps on him. Do you ever see that?
Yeah.
He has a freaking jetpack, bro.
Man,
Dude, he's got a jetpack.
and he's first introduced.
Now that I think about that, you mentioning the jetpack, that's kind of ballsy because this came right after the era of sci-fi being like the Jetsons with their little like bubble packs.
You're right.
Jetpacks were tacky until Boba Fett had one. And
Well,
then
he's
they were
also
like,
got
again.
one.
He also had it had this cool like angular like attachment look to it.
Do you know what was
Like,
cool about those Star Wars designs in like the first two movies? Like, is sometimes you wouldn't even get a payoff. Like, you see Boba Fett in his jetpack, he doesn't use it in Empire Strikes Back.
That's a
Yeah.
good point.
You don't get a payoff of that to the third movie. Like, you can tell that this item has a purpose, but you're not necessarily going to see the purpose in the movie.
Right.
And that's something I appreciate because it really adds to
I think
the depth of the world. It's
that's-
like, just because you don't get to see that item do what it's built for, it was designed with a purpose in mind. Not just to, like, yes, to look cool as a Boba Fett, but also, he can fly.
Well, you didn't even know it was a jetpack until it was being used. Because when I first saw it, for the very first time, I thought it was like an oxygen tank. Maybe he's.
It
like
could be
an-
anything.
It could
Yeah.
be anything. And then all of a sudden, whoop, he's flying.
And you're like, we go from Hoth to them. We'll go through a whole bunch of cool space stuff, like the whole space thing that we witness Han and Leia go through with, on the Millennium Falcon with, of course, everybody else.
A model done, no CGI space sequence, going through these asteroids, running from TIE fighters and Star Destroyers, done completely practically, looks amazing.
Yeah.
It's
Like,
super
it
cool.
holds up to this day. Looks fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
just yes.
You can, like, you brought up how they use their budget, and it really shows
Oh, yeah.
through a lot of this, because, like, if you remember, we saw one Star Destroyer in the entirety of the first movie,
Yep.
and then we see 3, just casually,
Yeah.
and then that's, like, not even the most impressive part.
Didn't we see 2 in New Hope?
Was
when
there
they're getting
2?
chased off of Tatooine?
You're right, my
Oh,
bad. I
yeah.
forgot about that one.
2
But
of
if
them
you
just
meant
kinda,
what
like, beach bully up behind them.
Yeah, but in this
We're gonna
one,
get you.
Right.
in this one, we see a lot of more of that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
and then we get Dagobah, which is such a cool planet still.
Yeah.
They got the fog, and it's got that cool swamp feel, and
Such
we
a good
introduced
atmosphere.
a character
Dagobah.
who would go on to become super iconic.
I love this. I love this.
The first time I'd ever watched it, my dad told me I had to watch these movies.
Uh-huh.
And I still remember my reaction as a kid, loving the first movie. The second movie freaked me out because of all the dark stuff that happens.
Yeah.
It's really depressing. It's a sad movie. And when they first introduced Yoda, and since I had no knowledge of anything that his, like, you know, what his connectedness to the rest of the world was, I was like, what is this little imp and what the fuck does he want? Like, he's a little shithead in a good chunk of the...
Yeah,
of-
exactly.
He's crazy. He's a
Yeah,
crazy
he's
little
crazy.
He's
And you're
no
like,
better than the Jawa because he's literally like stealing Luke's hungry man out of R2D2.
yeah. And I'm just like, what the
He's feeding
fuck
with
is
a
this thing's
stick.
problem? It's such a weird thing.
No, and
To, like-
it's great because it's like, oh, there's more to this than what you see, and it's like the thing about the Force is it's not about being physically
It's
intimidating
Metachlorians.
or
God
Shut
damn
up.
it, Will.
I'm gonna murder you. It's not about being physically intimidating or physically strong. The whole point is that you're strong in spirit, in my opinion. Or like, there's something to be said about the good versus evil, the simplicity of the Force in these movies, and it's just a simple. It's fun. It's a representation of, because like a lot of people, I think in their lives, are like, oh well, you know, real life is not good versus evil, and it's like, yeah, that's a way you can look at it, but also, isn't it just nice to watch evil get their butt kicked? In this
Yeah.
movie though, good gets its butt kicked.
It does.
Because
Yes.
Which makes it even more,
hard to watch.
Sobering, maybe?
I was going to say, even more of a payoff, though.
Yeah.
We get to see them have their first victory, and then we see them get beat down by the Empire
Mhm.
that they've been hyping up the entire first movie. You know, it
I mean,
grounds them as
As a
Yeah.
threat,
Mhm.
which other sequel films and other sequel trilogies may or may not do with their villains. Anyways,
Attack the clones.
anyways, but no, it's The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, we haven't even talked about Cloud City.
Yeah.
It's like
That's where I was trying to go to this,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
we were going from lookout to lookout. Cloud City is so cool.
It's so
It's
cool.
it's got this real futuristic kind of like, whoa, high-end city look. It's in the clouds, you know.
It's so clean
and,
and so
and
is
it feels
Lando.
so.
Lando is so Cloud City.
Probably my favorite character in the second movie.
He's so
I love
great.
Lando,
Mhm.
but he's traitorous. He's a dick.
He is.
He's a
but
jerk.
You can't hate him for
No,
it. He's
'cause-
so good.
And here's the thing, Lando was doing what he thought he had to do to protect his people.
You know, Lando's relatable, and he's not like an antagonist. You're like, this is
No.
a guy who's doing
Right.
what he's gotta.
Yeah, he's a good guy, but I think that's the most intimidating of the power that we see the Empire kind of flex in Empire Strikes Back. It's not the walkers, it's not all of the Star Destroyers or Vader. It's the fact that they can turn good guys, good characters against the heroes.
Mhm.
You
Yes.
know, just that power of pure intimidation and force of will.
And then we also get to see a display of that antagonist we saw, you know, Vader. We haven't seen a crazy amount of him in A New Hope. We saw him do things.
Yeah.
We saw him beat Ben Kenobi, and it's like, oh no. Like, we don't get a display, but we get a lot of his
Like what he
power.
does to Ben Kenobi's cloak.
Yeah, yeah.
Where'd he go?
Here's the thing too about him. He sets up a trap for Luke Skywalker because he knows Luke Skywalker can sense Leia and Han's distress in the Force by torturing Han Solo. Just for that purpose. I like it because Han Solo comes out and he's just like, they never even asked me any questions. Because no, he doesn't need you, he's not torturing you to interrogate you, he wants Luke Skywalker, and doing this will get him to come to you because he knows that he has a connection to you guys, which I think is really awesome.
Plus, if
As
you peel
we-
back the layers, it's a dad intimidating his daughter's boyfriend. That's all that is.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Whoa, I didn't even think about
Mind
Never home before
blown.
8.
But yeah, that's a really good point. That like, there's this clear like he knows what he wants and
Yeah.
he's going to get it, and the viewer might not even really realize it till it happens.
Anyways, I think we should talk about the big reveal. How do you follow up one of the most iconic films of all time with this movie that through the ages, in my opinion, I think the most probably referenced like quote from any movie ever.
I am your father.
Like, it is probably the most culturally, like, ingrained in America, biggest what moment in history. Like, I, as somebody who wasn't there to see it and didn't get that experience, I am very jealous of people who did.
But yeah, that scene and that whole fight we talked about on the way here, it's viscerally emotional.
Yeah, it's and it does one thing that I love. It shows Darth Vader. It's not just a good sword fighter. He uses the Force, and he uses the Force a lot in this movie actually, and in that fight, throwing things with it at Luke, like beating him up, and like yeah, it's a little. Some of Luke's acting's a little cheesy at that part. It's like, but
impossible. That's impossible.
But it's so like you overlook that stuff because it doesn't matter because you can feel the emotion in the moment.
Yeah,
It's tense.
And
it's tense, it's heavy, it
And
makes
then
you
they
feel.
cut the tension real quick.
Here's the thing. Darth Vader could have easily...
He could have given Luke a hand.
No. Oh my god.
Come on, do it with me.
Man, guys, I don't know what's cheesier,
I'm
that
fine.
or his acting. Yeah.
Oh man, good sequels. I love it when they get better, but sometimes they get slightly worse. Let's talk about Return of the Jedi.
I mean, all right.
I don't see the hate, really. I don't. It's not the same movie, but how are you gonna follow up Empire Strikes Back?
That's true.
That is fair, but here's the thing.
Hmm.
I don't hate Return of the Jedi because I still think it's a very strong movie. I have some issues with it that make it stand out amongst the other two movies, which I almost have zero issues with. I don't think Han Solo is handled very well at all, to the point where he kind of feels like he's just bumbling about.
Yeah.
Like his character has kind of already fulfilled his arc in the first two movies, and it's like, okay, so now he's just another soldier. Like that's how it feels to me. I feel like the best parts of Return of the Jedi, the parts that really give it the goodness that matter to me, are the Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader parts during I think it's actually like the whole last third of the movie.
Yeah,
is
pretty
when
much.
he surrenders himself, and then he's like the whole like confrontation with the Emperor. That stuff, the juiciness. The rescue scene, it's a fun action scene, but it is very, oh yeah, we just got to go save this guy so we can. Like it's very much it's a side quest, and it's the whole first 25 to a half hour of the movie.
It definitely helps to set up Luke as a more power character,
which is good.
Yeah,
But-
it does that, and it also establishes. You know, you were saying that Han Solo is a much weaker character going into Episode 6 compared to any of the others. I think it's just because he takes a back seat compared to a couple others. Lando. He takes a back seat to Lando in Episode 6 because who is flying the Millennium Falcon at the end of Episode 6? It's Lando.
It's
and
Lando.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I don't think Lando's more prominent character in Episode 6
wouldn't
than
say
Han
he's
is.
more
He's only in
prominent.
it for like 15 minutes.
I
compared
think
to Han.
it's a matter of like, hey, we've had our growth here and there, but it's time for some other people to show.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
fair.
Because a lot of Lando redeems himself in the last movie.
But, yes.
And if we
He
don't want to
redeems
talk
himself.
about importance or total time, Han is then taking a back seat to Darth Vader as a main character.
Which is fair, because Darth Vader needs to get more development in that movie. But and then my last gripe, and then just so I can kind of wrap up my feelings about it, my last gripe with Return of the Jedi, and it's a very common one, I'm not the biggest fan of the Ewoks. I find them really... my biggest suspension of disbelief in the entire Star Wars trilogy isn't the Force, it's not Space Wizards, it's not any of that junk. It's the fact that the Ewoks could be the best, quoting the Emperor, best regiment of his best men in any kind of combat. Because,
the teddy bears.
yeah, I mean,
The Care Bears.
so while I was watching it this time, I was thinking, the only way this makes sense is if there are hundreds of thousands of Ewoks. Because numbers is the only way they beat a force like that. Constantly overwhelming them.
Well, you gotta think about it. Stormtroopers can't aim for shit.
Yeah, but that's not what I mean.
I don't like them either.
Yeah.
They are probably I think everything on the ground during that is some of
Yeah.
the weakest stuff in
That
Return
stuff,
of the Jedi.
whenever it cuts to the ground, I'm like, get me back to Luke and Vader or the
Right.
space battle.
I want to talk about the space battle because it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like it feels like the space battle we've been building up to. Because if you've known, like, you know, we've had it where each movie ups the ante, and that last one is just, it feels like a full-on final battle. You know, you've got both sides going full force at each other. It's really cool, and you know the stakes are real.
Yeah,
The stakes are crazy real because
everybody, they shared the plan with everybody.
yeah, it felt like this is it. This is it. Everyone's here. You've got everything you can think of. I mean, we have it's a great thing because you also see bits and pieces of the whole universe there. You got the Mon Calamari, you got the other remnants of the rebellion. You've got
Ooh, Basil, is that a contender for the most quoted line?
it's a trap.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
It's a trap!
And he's dead. Fuck you, Disney.
Do you remember that point you made earlier about how most of Star Wars is like models and characters?
Yeah.
Seemed like they were made for the express purpose of making toys, but it didn't hurt them.
Yeah.
Ewoks were definitely made to
Oh, yeah.
sell
Oh,
made,
yeah.
like plushies,
Oh.
and it kind of bit them in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, hey, we need a cute character.
Hey, by the way, we found out what Boba Fett's like. He goes down like a bitch in this movie.
Yeah,
you know?
Boba Fett goes down like a bitch.
But I think it's
Boba Fett.
But you brought up how earlier it's like a show of power to
Yeah.
show like how strong Luke's gotten. It sure feels like it because this guy who is intimidating, we don't know anything about him.
Right.
Whoa, look at that cool thing on his back that we don't know what it does. Suddenly, we get to see it and we're like, oh god, this guy is a threat.
It does everything.
And
It's
they-
got rockets.
He
and
flies now.
fire.
He flies.
He flies now.
It's
Yeah.
like the last third is definitely some of the stronger moments I'd say the series has, and we also get to see the big bad threat, the real threat,
Yeah.
the one that's
Ian
been.
McDiarmid.
Jabba the Hutt.
The slug.
Hey, props to them for those awesome practical effects.
Looks so good, so
yeah.
unsettling and
I
creepy.
think Jabba's palace is by far my favorite location of all of the
From a technical standpoint, I'd agree.
yeah, just from like the practical effects and all the different models and aliens and things that they had. It was like Mos Eisley up to 11.
Yeah. Also,
Interject, please.
yeah. Come on, Will.
I do like Jabba's palace. I do like the Rain Corps, or if that's what it's called.
Yeah.
The Rain Corps. Very inspiring way in how it got killed. But I don't like the set of it that much. Even though I do like it how it's like a bar where villains and bounty hunters go to hang out and, you know, shoot shit and stuff like that. It's not one of my favorites. I like Yavin 4.
Oh, I have to agree on that. I like the way Yavin 4
The
looks. The,
space
like,
that
it feels very.
It's a repurposed like temple.
Yeah,
Yeah,
turned
it's
into a
it's
military
an
base.
old Sith temple, actually.
Is it Sith?
yes
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is. Yes, it
Wow.
is.
The
I
irony.
don't remember that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I can see what you mean by that. The sort of level of quality that they have for that is just really up there.
I always felt like a sicko for laughing at the gonk droid they have flipped upside
Oh.
down. They're just burning his feet. There's no reason. They just have hot metal just touching this gonk droid's
But it's really
feet.
not hot.
Yeah.
It's just smoke coming.
And he
through
goes,
the thing.
Oh no, it's I think it's funny too. It's really good.
It's so good.
It shows you also that droids can be tortured too, which is very
And it
interesting.
shows the droids
Yeah,
have
that they
feelings.
could feel pain.
Yeah, the Death Star, incomplete.
Mhm.
They're
Death Star
rebuilding
2.
it. Death Star 2, they're rebuilding it. It's
Electric Boogaloo.
the thing I like is that you go full circle. You see the first one, and now they're building a second. So you know the audience immediately has attachment to.
Yeah.
This thing's bad,
Right.
and we got to stop it.
It's a big bad
It's bad.
boy.
It's a bad boy.
It's another setup to the power of the Empire, because it shows that it wasn't just a one-off fluke.
They were gonna build more.
They got cash for another. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy dangerous too. We know it can blow up plants. You know, we've seen its power, and they beat it once. And it's like, gotta beat it again, or
Right.
we're just gonna be back at square one. Plus,
They
after the
sealed up the vents this time. What are we gonna do?
I do appreciate that about this though. It's like it's still under construction. All right, they haven't finished this thing yet,
Yeah.
and that does make it a weaker, more tantalizing little target. You know,
Exactly.
a little tasty target. That being said, going into the Empire or Emperor,
Very salty.
who is on the Death Star, like talk about nailing a character just like that. I mean, it's something to be said. They're still doing it 3 movies in, just nailing a character's design and look and presentation and acting.
the moment he turns his chair around and you see him, you're just like,
Those yellow glowing
Well, you
eyes.
Yeah,
see
I
him.
think the voice too.
well, you know what I mean. But
Oh,
in, like
yeah.
in this kind of perspective,
Yeah.
Yeah, the
having
vo-
our character face
voice.
to face with him,
The voice.
the voice is what sells the Emperor.
Do it.
It's like this tinge of like evil, maniacal, just like cartoonishly evil to the point that it's just like you can't help but enjoy it.
Even cackle, the cackle.
Anyone else have any thoughts about Return of the Jedi they'd like to share?
Let's talk about the
Best
big,
Stephen King film ever.
You shut up. Okay.
Let's talk about the big turncoat moment of Vader seeing his son get electrocuted, die, flipping, after Lucas put in all of this groundwork from the past 2 movies since he learned that it was his father, plugging away constantly at Vader. No, I'm not gonna fight you. I'm not gonna fight you, Dad. You gotta stop. You gotta stop. There's not too late.
It's still good in you.
Yeah, he does it. He yeets the Emperor off.
It's the ultimate redemption arc,
It is,
and
yes.
it's done. Like, here's the thing: this guy was the baddest dude. He was the baddest guy. He's the baddest man in the whole downtown. But Luke Skywalker shows up, and he's the goodest guy, and he's the optimist, and he's the dude, the hopeful man, the good person who doesn't give up on anyone. Ryan Johnson, and saves his father through sheer belief and hope.
Force of will.
This is very much a movie of redemption. Yeah. There's a lot of that. Lando
that-
gets redeemed. Vader gets redeemed.
Lando.
Yeah, I said Lando.
In much of a way, Han
Yes.
gets
he-
redeemed.
Well, he's already redeemed after the first movie.
I wouldn't say he's redeemed, but he definitely has like his moment of like, alright, you're right. I gotta stop being stupid.
Jabba the Hutt gets redeemed.
Yeah, he gets choked.
Oh yeah.
He gets reamed.
One thing we
salt
have
on
not
it. What
talked
did
about
we
at
think
all, after almost an hour of talking about Star Wars,
Wait, what?
the soundtrack. Would Star Wars be what it is today if its score was generic or bland
No.
or
No.
not exactly what it
No.
No, it would be terrible, but also I think we should have rap music instead.
The best piece of music, in my opinion, in the entirety of Star Wars is Luke Skywalker looking over the. I think it's just called Twin Suns or whatever. Binary Sunset.
Yep. You mean
Like
this binary sunset?
yeah.
He got you.
The
Holy shit.
new Star Wars movies is, I think, a huge part of the reason why they can make. I mean, besides the fact that they do talk about nostalgia, you just do the music in the trailer and people are excited. You could show 3 different shots of nothing, playing that. You could have the title Star Wars, play a little bit of that music, and boom, people are going to be in the theater seeing that movie. The original creators of it can't get enough praise for what they've done.
Yeah.
The fact that John Williams cannot get enough praise for what he's done with that music. Like, it's one of those things where it's once in a lifetime, once in a century level of popular. I mean, within the context of America, obviously. It is part of American culture and will be for a very long time if Disney has their way.
I think the original trilogy is really good. That's it. That's all you need. It's the best, and it's still really good. It holds up in a lot of ways. That's all I gotta say.
Original trilogy of Star Wars is my second favorite movie trilogy of all time. It is my favorite anything to do with space movie, like trilogy, like whatever, of all time. It is the original trilogy of Star Wars is probably one of the most impactful things, like, in my inspiration of like what I do and what I want to do. And next to Lord of the Rings is the only other thing that it's like the toppest tier. And I just can't give it praise enough. And I think regardless of the fall that George Lucas had with the prequels and where Disney's taking Star Wars now, we'll always have the original trilogy.
Originals are always the best. 4, 5, and 6.
1, 2, and 3.
Well, technically, 1,
Star
2,
Wars
and 3.
Empire Return.
Well, even though
I'm sorry.
even though my very first Star Wars episode was Revenge of the Sith, I was like, eh. But then I saw A New Hope and Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, and I was like, this is a whole different ballgame. This is amazing. This is so different than what. Yeah, home run, man. They hit a home run on this, and it's so different in a way that just makes you think, what are the possibilities?
And then they did tell you, and then they weren't very good.
I would say that, like you said, it's definitely influenced my life in a multitude of ways, on a career standpoint, personality. You know, I framed my entire idea of good versus bad between Jedi and Sith. You know, it's just kind of synonymous with my mentality and what I equate with being a good or a not good person.
Will?
You okay? You're just kind of gyrating.
I hope you zoom in on that.
If it's any indication to how much I loved Star Wars, there's probably a series of pictures. I might get them to you to put in,
Okay.
but maybe not. It's me Christmas morning. Pretty sure it's in my underwear. Every year for like 6 years, between the age of 5 and 11 or 12, getting a Star Wars game or a Star Wars movie or something Star Wars and just having the biggest just childlike grin.
Yeah.
And it was so wholesome because Star Wars to me back then could do no wrong. You
Yeah.
know, Star Wars was just right.
But
Okay.
this has been a very special episode of The Commuters. Next time we'll be doing either the sequels or the prequels. We're still kind of up in there on what we're going to do. But let's just say it might be one. So that'll
All
be a
I know
surprise.
is I hope we talk about Jar Jar Binks in the next one.
You're gonna be so mad, sir.
I fucking hate you.